finally finished programming for the day. Wait a minute. Oh, that's right, I forgot to do that one warm-up move. Okay. Oh. No. Well, it could be this, but then I could also see that it's being that, and I don't know. No! Folks, don't let that be you. Don't fall victim to seeing exercise variations on your social media of choice and not knowing when to do what. When to elevate the heels, when to elevate the toes. Hello everybody, Zach Couples Physical Therapist here, and I'm here to solve that problem for you today. Because I don't want you crying over the fact that you don't know whether or not you need to elevate heels or elevate toes on a given move. We're going to go into the biomechanics of what changes when we utilize this specific exercise strategy, and I'm going to give you some ideas and pointers on how to put it into your programming so you can maximize your clients' mobility and fitness gains. Upon first glance, it may seem though we are merely moving the ankle into more plantar flexion if we elevate the heel, or more dorsiflexion if we elevate the toes. But it's so much more than that, folks. But to really know why it is so much more, we have to look at the other components within the foot that are impacted every time we elevate the heels or we elevate the toes. First off, ankle motions do not occur in isolation. In fact, there's a lot of other joints that are involved when I am moving the ankle through plantar flexion, heel elevation, or dorsiflexion, toe elevation. I'm not going to talk much about the foot because I don't think that's as relevant yet as another joint within your foot, and that would be the subtalar joint. So we're talking about not the talocrural where we see dorsiflexion and plantar flexion occurring, but the joint that is between your heel, which is the calcaneus, and the talus. This is important because it contributes to some of the rotational actions that we're going to see that occur when I change the position that my foot's in. There's two movements that occur within the subtalar joint. You have calcaneal inversion, which is the calcaneus tipping inward. So if you've ever sprained your ankle, chances are you've probably dealt with some calcaneal inversion. The other one is calcaneal eversion, which is now where the heel is flattening. You're seeing it kind of move more outwards towards the body. So whenever you step and you start to see your foot flatten, chances are the calcaneus is everting in order to make that happen. And these frontal plane-ish movements are important for ankle plantar flexion and dorsiflexion because it changes the shape and position of my foot. So when the calcaneus is more inverted or tipped inward, that allows the arch to stay a little bit bigger, which is needed when I hit initial contact as well as when I'm pursuing toe off. Conversely, when the calcaneus everts, that allows the arch to flatten, which is needed as the tibia translates forward. So now, folks, I bet you can surmise what subtalar actions are paired with specific actions at the ankle joint. Namely, if the calcaneus is inverted, tipped inward, that's going to be paired with ankle plantar flexion. So plantar flexion and inversion are paired together. Conversely, when the subtalar joint everts, that is paired with ankle dorsiflexion. Therefore, when I elevate the heel, the ankle is going to be in more of a plantar flexed and inverted position. And then when I elevate the toes, the ankle is going to be in more of a dorsiflexed and everted position. Cool story, Zach. Who cares? Why is it important that these two actions are occurring when I elevate my heels and elevate my toes? I care, fam. And the reason why is because those ankle positions will influence what rotational actions occur throughout the femurs. I want us to run a little experiment, shall we? Here's what I want you to do. I'm going you to go ahead and invert and plantar flex your ankle and just keep going. And I want you to notice what your femur does, or the rest of your leg. Watch. You'll notice that my knee is now pointing outward. Oh, I wonder what rotation that is at the hip. By golly bows, it's hip external rotation. So we can see that if I plantar flex and invert the foot, my femur is going to externally rotate. Conversely, watch what happens when you run eversion through your leg. Ready? So when I evert the ankle and I dorsiflex, you'll notice that my knee is now caving inward. What rotation is that, folks? That would be your classic internal rotation. So if I'm utilizing strategies that promote eversion and dorsiflexion of the ankle, that's going to increase the internal rotation capabilities that are occurring at my extremity. So then you must be wondering, how does the rotation that's occurring at the hip influence what's crack-a-lackin' with my pelvis? I'm glad you asked. If the hip is creating more external rotation, the way that it occurs is by the acetabulum, which is the hole that your femur sits in, is going to be more externally rotated or retroverted. That happens, this movement right here, with sacral counternutation, which is the sacrum tipping backwards. This position is associated with more things that are creating vertical or up and down pelvic displacement. Think squats, think split squats where you're staying more upright, think jumping, things of that nature. Conversely, when I have a more internally rotated femur, that's associated with the acetabulum being more internally rotated or anteverted, which is going to be corresponded with sacral nutation, or the sacrum tipping forward. We see this action occurring at the pelvis with more horizontally displaced activities, such as hinging-based things, certain types of accelerations, basically any type of deadlift variation, or if I'm taking a split squat and I'm a little bit more bent over, we would be associating that with sacral nutation. You probably see where I'm going to go with this, folks. If plantar flexion and inversion is associated with hip external rotation, and that's associated with sacral counternutation, if I elevate the heels, that's going to make movements that require sacral counternutation that much easier. Why is it that you can squat deeper when you elevate your heels? Because squatting is associated with vertical pelvic displacement. If I elevate the heels, it promotes the mechanics needed to create that action. And so if you need something where I need to go up and down and I want to make it occur more easily, I want to elevate the heels. Conversely, if I elevate the toes, that's going to promote dorsiflexion and eversion, which is going to promote hip internal rotation, which is going to promote sacral nutation, which I need during hinging-based exercises. So, if I got a move that is going to promote the pelvis moving more horizontally, elevating the toes can assist with that because it places the foot in a position that is conducive to allowing that action to happen, at least in theory. You see, folks, I elevate heels quite frequently, but I find myself rarely elevating the toes, and there's a good reason for that. Now, of course, we know if I can create ankle dorsiflexion in some way, shape, or form, that's going to make sacral nutation occur much more easily. But here's the issue. Do you ever measure someone's ankle dorsiflexion capabilities? The answer, folks, if you do, is most individuals out there seem to be fairly restricted in ankle dorsiflexion. And so think about this. If I know someone can't dorsiflex their ankle, maybe even past 0, and then I elevate the toes some way, well, I know they're probably not going to be getting it through the talocrural joint. How are they getting into that dorsiflex position? I don't know. Could be a lot of different cheats. It could be that they're creating a pronation action towards the midfoot, but nothing is changing at the ankle and the subtalar joint. Or I see this happen quite a bit. You'll see these individuals, when you elevate the toes, they'll end up hyperextending the knees. When I hyperextend the knees, it's much harder to actually create a hinging action because it kind of locks the pelvis in place. And so what people inevitably do in this situation is when they do the hinge, instead of pushing the hips back, they end up bending through the lumbar spine, which is going to limit how well you can load into the hips. So personally, I'm not someone who elevates the toes all that often. That said, we can still take advantage of foot position to promote sacral nutation. I just think we can get the benefits without elevating the toes. Simple. Just keep someone's foot flatter on the ground. Folks, do you ever wonder why it's easier to deadlift either barefoot or with minimalist shoes? The reason why, folks, is because when you are flat on the ground, your ankle is going to be in more of a dorsiflexed and subsequently everted position, which, folks, promotes horizontal pelvic displacement via sacral nutation. So, can I get the benefits of creating that hip position just by being flat on the ground? I think so, especially if you're someone who doesn't have much ankle dorsiflexion available. That's why doing deadlifts in Olympic lifting shoes or on a ramp generally doesn't go as well as with the foot flat. You can take advantage of the concept of foot position just by keeping your foot flat on the ground. Now, if you're someone who has worked and you're restoring a lot more ankle dorsiflexion and you need to drive that tail end of hip internal rotation and sacral nutation, I can see that being a useful time to incorporate the toe elevation. The one example that I will do this is if I do a toes elevated toe touch and I want to get that last little bit of horizontal pelvic displacement. That's typically the one time that I'll elevate the toes, but I've only given that as a terminal exercise after we've done activities to increase ankle mobility and promote hip internal rotation. And those are the key theoretical concepts in terms of when I would elevate the heels or elevate the toes.
Now that we've discussed the biomechanics surrounding why you might elevate the heels or elevate the forefoot, let's now talk logistics. Typically, what I recommend you're going to use if you elevate the heels is some type of wedge or Olympic lifting shoes. The two wedges that I use are either this brand right here, the Wedgies by my guy Eric. I typically will use these for more single leg based exercises. Or if I'm doing something bilateral, kind of heavy, I'm going to utilize a ramp that's made by my buddy Levi. Links in the description below to both of those. And now some people will utilize plates of some sort in lieu of not having ramps. Now these can work, but I will say that the ramp is generally a better, or even Olympic lifting shoes, is a better choice than utilizing just a plate only to elevate the heels. And there's good reason for that. One, when I put my entire foot on this ramp, it covers the whole foot. So basically, what I've done is I've taken the ground and I've tipped it just like this. And you can see that my foot and the mechanics associated with that are still the same. Conversely, if I just elevate my heel with a plate, what can happen is the big toe can go into extension depending on the height. And if the big toe is in extension at the start position, what that does is that increases the height of the arch from the beginning. Now you might be thinking, Zach, well, that was sort of the point of having the ramp, so why is that a bad thing? Well, the reason why it's an undesirable thing is because as you descend down into a squat or split squat or something like that, the arch should flatten. If the big toe is in extension, it's going to be a much more difficult situation in order to get that. A ramp just merely encourages better foot mechanics. Now, is squatting with plates going to just ruin everything and destroy your foot and make your squat the worst thing ever? Probably not. But I do think from a biomechanical standpoint, the ramp makes more sense. And just to illustrate this concept, folks, I'm going to perform a loaded squat, and I'll give you a few different views, both utilizing a ramp versus using plates, and you can see the difference between the two.
Folks, take a look at the heels. Look how much better my contact is when I'm on the ramp in comparison to the plates. And I notice a difference too because I felt a little bit more knee strain with the plates. It's even more magnified from this view, as well as the pronation on my right foot. It's significantly worse when I have plates versus the ramp, one of many reasons why I prefer ramps over plates.
Now when it comes to keeping the foot flat or toe elevation, again, the rules are the same. If you keep the foot flat, I would either go barefoot or with a very minimalist shoe. Chuck Taylor's, some type of minimal shoe will work really well. And then the same rules apply if you do end up doing some toe or forefoot elevation. I would utilize a ramp for the reasons we discussed. You really want to just change the foot's relationship to the ground as opposed to changing the biomechanics of the foot when you're in standing. There you have it, folks. Now you should be armed with when you should elevate the heels or when you should elevate the toes. If you want to drive more vertical pelvic movements like squats, heel elevation is the way to go. If you're trying to do more hinge-like or horizontal pelvic displacement activities, being flat on the ground or elevating the toes will help you get there. What struggles have you had implementing heel versus toe elevation? What type of topics are you struggling with that you need assistance? What in here did I not answer that you need me to answer? Go ahead and comment below. And while you're here hanging out on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button because I produce content every week or so that will help take your movement knowledge to the next level. If you want to learn more, please check me out at zachcouples.com, or if you need some practical implementation of some of these concepts, I would strongly encourage you to check out my seminar, Human Matrix. If you're following this in 2022, we got 3 dates happening in the US. May 7th and 8th is going to be in Buffalo, New York, May 28th and 29th in Seattle, Washington, and August 6th and 7th in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm also going to be in Europe and Slovenia on October 15th and 16th, so please go ahead, check us out, zachcouples.com/seminars if you want to learn from me that way. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in. You've been an incredible, outstanding audience, and I hope that you keep it real but not to the extent when things go wrong. Stay hungry, stay learning, stay moving, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.